So Happy New Year, everyone. I'm sure you've heard that multiple times in the last 5 days. But those words and the expectations of a new year often become associated with change as well as hope. The new year is a time where people let go of what is old and potentially make promises to change. We may try to move into this time with positive intentions and hopes to change maybe a particular behavior or habit, or may vow to work on ourselves and have hopes to fully live into those intentions. As we look at the idea of making New Year's resolutions, for example, something many people do over the course of the new year, I'm reminded of a few things, such as how when we make those resolutions without a plan, we may struggle with those resolutions. When we make those resolutions without a support system, we may struggle with those resolutions. And also, when we make resolutions to outwardly change without doing the inner work, we also may struggle with those resolutions. In his book, A Hidden Wholeness, Parker Palmer encourages us to reflect on the deep sense of integrity and wholeness that each of us has inside of us that is waiting to be embraced or uncovered. The transition into the new year brings with it a sense of renewal, a blank slate upon which we can inscribe our dreams and intentions, yet the hustle of resolutions and the pressure to improve, we may overlook the essence of who we are. Palmer reminds us that wholeness is not about perfection, rather it's about recognizing our inherent value and the interconnectedness of our experiences. Each of us carries stories of joy, sorrow, success, and failure. And it is through these stories and connections that we make that we begin to understand our true selves better. When we go through life with a sense of disconnection to ourselves just as much as to anything else, it can lead many people to feeling not understood, not seen, not heard. And this can lead to a loss of hope or purpose. Now, this leads me to a movie that may seem odd to talk about, but it starts with this sense of disconnection. So we had the reading right before this message. But I don't know about any of you, but over the course of the years, I've enjoyed watching zombie movies. Anyone else like zombie movies? Right, not just me then. Shows like The Walking Dead, Zombieland, these shows have become popular in the last however many years they've been on, certainly the last decade. Some of these shows are quite funny and some of them quite scary. So one zombie movie that we talked about, we did a reading on directly before this message, and is considered somewhat of a classic now, is called Shaun of the Dead. Now it's pretty funny in its own way, pretty gory as well. But what I find powerful about it is the beginning of this movie. So we see our protagonist, Shaun, on an ordinary day, going about his business, going to the store to pick up a soda, a candy bar, something before work. Shaun typically keeps his head down. He doesn't notice what's going on in the world around him at all. And this becomes apparent the following day, when he goes about his same routine, but the people around him have all been turned into zombies. He somehow manages to go through his entire day without noticing a single zombie that is walking around him on the streets or in the store where he's buying his candy bar and soda. So one discussion that I read in the daily devotional email written by someone in the UCC that we shared directly before this message, shared that it can be seen as a testament of some of the communication struggles that society has been falling into. Many people fall into the trap of not being present, even to the people who may physically be around them. For example, there's a meme out there or pictures out there of people that are sitting around a dinner table and we're all staring at phones instead of interacting with each other. How many of you all have been guilty of doing something like that? I know I have. It also speaks to the struggle of self-esteem, though, and the idea of self-worth, purpose and meaning. Sean feels stuck in the mundane and seemingly hopelessness of his day-to-day drudgery in existence. He forgets anniversaries, he settles for what is less than when it comes to relationships, and he struggles to see his ways out of this. Long story short of this is that Sean rejected his role in the world. He fails to suit up and show up for his own life. It's only when he's made aware of the reality of what's going on around him that he begins to recognize his need for action, to once more become a part of that world that he rejected, and therefore his need to suit up and show up to his life. Let's face it, it can be remarkably easy to stay home in front of the TV or go about our day potentially exchanging social pleasantries, ritual communication, rather than actually engaging in what is meaningful, what is life-giving, and claiming our role and what we experience as our purpose in the world. What does it take for us to suit up and show up to our own life? Well, first of all, it takes the ability to be present physically, emotionally, and mentally. Like that example of people sitting around a dinner table staring at their phones. Yes, they are physically there, but they're not present to their situation or the people around them. Suit up and show up. So often, especially when it comes to substance or alcohol use disorders, the substance gets in our way of us being present. Yes, we may have been physically in a place, but we may not have actually shown up. So what do we need to do? We need to suit up and show up. For those of us who are family members and have a loved one who is struggling with substance or alcohol use disorder, we may begin to lose focus on ourselves and put all of our focus on them and what they are doing. We begin to take our focus away from what is around us. And it seems as though we go through the motions of what needs to be done in our lives without necessarily experiencing the moments of wonder and joy. Basically because our focus may have been taken away from those moments. We may forget that we can go out to dinner with friends. We may forget that it's okay for us to go away for a weekend or have a vacation. We may forget that we deserve some me time. So what do we need to do? We need to suit up and show up. For those who are here in treatment, we all have different stories and situations, but things in our lives have happened that have had a direct impact on us and led us to a place of, in some cases, isolation, not being present to ourselves, to others, or to a source of hope, leaving us in some cases, like Sean, detached and missing out on what our life's about. There may have been situations in our life that have led to this sense of detachment, of not even wanting to be present, such as grief, trauma, anxiety, depression, or even that certain hopes that we had for our lives are not manifesting. And that leads us to, as previously said, rejecting the world, rather than learning how we can still be a part of it. A reading from Romans 5 verses 3 to 5 reads, "But we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope, and hope does not put us to shame." That phrase that invites us to glory in our sufferings, yeah, that sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? I mean, I've never heard anyone say, sufferings, yay, I want a piece of that suffering. Strange words. But it's not so much about inviting the sufferings as it is about reminding us that life happens, the good, the bad, and the downright traumatic at times. We don't have to like it, but we have to learn how we can best face it. How can we get the help that we need for it? How can we learn to physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually be present to it, or the ramifications of it? How can we learn to suit up and show up to those moments that we would rather ignore, recognizing that stuffing those traumas or heartbreaks down will not make them go away? Now, this reminds me of a phrase that I've said before. So there's a phrase in the 12-step program that I'm not particularly fond of, even though I do understand the meaning of it and the root of where it comes from. And that phrase is fake it till you make it. But a phrase that I found that I really prefer, that's more in line with the desire to embrace the integrity and wholeness that Parker Palmer talks about, is the phrase, face it till you make it. When we can face it till we make it and suit up and show up even in the most devastating moments of our lives, it shows us who we can truly become, what we are capable of, that we may get knocked down, but with help and time, we can get back up again. Another saying that seems to reflect this sentiment and highlights what the Romans reading talks about is, we don't grow when things are easy. We grow when we face challenges. Now, as I say this, it might sound quite simplified. So I want to honor the pain that some folks have been through. None of this growth and change is easy, and it will take time. But when we're able to find people who can help us, spend time with us, engage with us, we will find that our suiting up and showing up will give us the tools that can empower us to that greater experience of growth. The reality is that wherever we are in this continuum of the disease, family member, patient, alumni, friend, we have a right to be part of our own recovery. A story our dear Father Bill had told in chapel was of a mother who had been living with her alcohol use disorder. She had a daughter would often find her mother home drunk, not knowing how her mother would be when she'd come home from school, so she could never have friends around. So she was always tiptoeing in, not knowing how she was going to find her mother when she returned from school. Eventually, though, the mother did get sober. Now, when the daughter became a teenager, and her mother was still sober at this time, she began to release her anger towards her mother and herself due to the trauma from these childhood experiences. And she began to release her anger through her own drinking and substance use. The teen was intervened on, and our Father Bill was a part of that intervention. So when asked about her drinking, she told her mother, "You caused this. This is all your fault. You are the one to blame for this." And the mother's response was priceless, and it's one that really stuck with me after hearing this story. She said, "Yes, I may have caused you these problems, but you have the solution. I may have caused you these problems, but you have the solution." Suit up and show up is about being present to our possibilities, rather than staying stuck in the fear, the hurt, the pain. Suit up and show up is about empowerment, taking ownership of the fact that you can and you deserve to receive the help for any pain that has been caused in your life. Suit up and show up is about reclaiming your life and the just for today phrases. And just as this one goes, it says, just for today, I will be unafraid. Especially, I will not be afraid to notice what is beautiful and to believe that as I give to the world, so the world will give to me. As I said in last week's message, Marianne Williamson quote reads, "A miracle is a shift in perception. When we begin to open our eyes, look around us, it's almost like we're coming back to life. We begin to experience life with a sense of potential joy, wonder, or at the very least awareness, as we get back in touch with that inner integrity and wholeness that's inside of each one of us." Suit up and show up. For family members who may be here, you suited up and showed up because you recognize the importance of being present in your lives as well as your loved one's life. As you learn how your loved one's substance or alcohol use has impacted your own behaviors and thinking. Suit up and show up. For others who made the choice to come here today, whether patients who physically chose to be in this auditorium or alumni who chose to drive here from wherever you may live, you chose to be an active participant in your life and in the life of this community. Suit up and show up. Moving forward in our lives as you get back into the real world, the need for community is apparent. Showing up at meetings, any meeting, whether 12-step or not, is the first step to becoming part of that community and that meeting. Now, related to this, how many of you all enjoy watching Jeopardy and shows like that? All right, so think about it. Have you ever been in this situation when they're asking the questions on Jeopardy and you're answering them and you're yelling at the TV and it's like they're asking the question that the participant there is like, oh, I don't know. And you're like yelling and yelling the answer to them, right? And you're getting more and more frustrated because you're yelling this answer to them. And eventually the buzzer goes off and Ken Jennings is like, sorry, the answer was. And then they say the answer and you're literally kicking yourself because you were yelling that answer to the TV the whole time. Now, as much as we may be engaged in what's on the TV, our physical absence limits us as to what we can actually do or how engaged we can actually be. Now, that said, if you happen to show up on the Jeopardy set and started screaming the answers, I'm pretty sure security would kick you out. But this just reinforces the need to be a participant in the events of your life rather than simply an observer on the sidelines. The need to be present for our lives is of utmost importance. The need to suit up and show up brings us into connection with people. It reminds us that after a meeting, we can go to that speaker who had a share and ask them a question or tell them what we thought about, similarities between their story and ours. Or even that someone's share may have given us the encouragement to do our own share. But if we're not there, we'll never know. And we'll never know what we're potentially missing or what we're potentially capable of. So what do we need to do? We need to suit up and show up. So how are you going to suit up and show up this week? Instead of setting resolutions, try setting intentions for yourself. Resolutions often come with the weight of expectation and fear of failure, while intentions invite us to engage with our lives more deeply. What if this year we don't simply focus on a list of things to change, but rather we focus on intentions that nurture our souls. Perhaps we can commit to being more present, to practicing gratitude, or seeking to have more compassion for ourselves and others. And get back in touch with that sense of integrity and inner wholeness. So how will you explore being more present in mind, body, and spirit? In lectures, in groups, meetings, or family dinners, or time with friends, or at work, or even in the recognition of needing your own time and being able to set boundaries around that. So, suit up and show up, and allow yourself to take back the life that you deserve. Amen.